Welcome to week 3 of Montessori philosophy. By now, you have probably written one of your papers, and you're finding that it's not that difficult to do because you've had some response from me. You're keeping up your messenger thread, or your message thread, and I will keep responding to that. You're going to find this week a little bit easier than last week because most of the readings have been continued from the last assignment. And our subject here, sensitive periods, is a central part of the absorbent mind in the formative period. It's a little more specialized in how some of that process happens. So we'll be talking about the relationships between the absorbent mind and formative periods and sensitive periods themselves. Now, sensitive periods seems like a bit of a curious name, like much of Montessori vocabulary, nomenclature, jargon, whatever you choose to call it. But as you work with it, you'll begin to realize just how much sense it does make. Montessori had a favorite simile upon which she used to explain sensitive periods. Strangely, it was based upon her readings of a scientist, the Dr. Hugo de Vries, who experimented with caterpillars in their metamorphosis from, caterpillar through the pupal stage and becoming eventually a butterfly, and what happened there. And his observations were that these creatures, these organisms, would go through periods of time when they were so focused on one particular task that they almost excluded everything else around them, particularly things like eating or mating. But the caterpillars did not mate. However, from the time they emerged from the egg, the caterpillars were drawn phototropically by the light of the sun to the tips of any plants that happened to be their kind of food, and they would go to the highest point and begin to devour all the newest leaves and eat and eat and eat and eat until they reached a very specific size. And then they would stop eating completely, leave their chrysalis, sleep for a while, apparently, but they were really developing into a butterfly. When they came out, they went into another eating frenzy. Then they would stop eating, and then they went into a mating frenzy. But everything had almost their full attention. Obviously, children are not caterpillars or butterflies, although we love to think of how colorful they are. Montessori saw that during the time of the absorbent mind and the formative period, children went through, regardless of the fact that they're all individuals, and our whole role as an adult, a parent or a facilitator, is to observe that child, see what's going on with them, try to figure out what they're thinking, and facilitate for them. Not teach them. We don't teach them. We provide guidance for them, we provide nurturing for them, and we remove obstacles from their development. Every child, regardless of their particular gifts and challenges, will go through the same stages of development. And all stage theorists are well aware of this, and they sort of agree on pretty closely to the order in which these things happen. Some of the general characteristics for children. Movement is one of the periods that begins even in the womb, when the child explores its own body and fingers and doesn't know much about them, but immediately as it comes out of the womb, it begins to explore everything with its mouth. That period is a sensitive period that goes on, and there's no way to stop it. We can get in the way of it, we can restrict the baby, but the baby is doing that to find its place in the environment, asserting itself. We can pretend like we're teaching them to talk, and there is a sensitive period for language, but we really don't do that. We can model for it, we can keep them from making noise, we can suppress noise, but the child will go through precise steps in the learning of the language in which it is born, or two languages simultaneously, and distinguish between the two. If they have, say, a nanny who speaks another language, the child automatically learns both of those languages separately, all the syntax and everything. That's another sensitive period. But the child is so focused upon these particular chores for a certain period of time that that is their main occupation. Some of them overlap, but they are like a searchlight, is what she said, focused on the thing that's most important, the faculty that is most important for them to develop during that time. And they will do that until they have mastered particular behaviors, develop certain characteristics, or acquired faculties that they can apply later. And those are just some of the characteristics that you'll be reading about that are parts of the sensitive period discussion. You will find your own. I'm going to give you just a few points on your readings and writing for the next week. Again, this assignment is due within 2 weeks. If you can do it in 1, that's great. Things to think about with regard to sensitive periods and how they relate to the formative period and to the absorbent mind. How do considerations of what Montessori called the prepared environment, that environment which teachers set up or which parents set up in the home to help the child to maximize their development, how do they relate to the concept of individual and general sensitive periods? How is the concept of sensitive periods related to the dynamics of the absorbent mind? How do the dynamics of sensitive periods influence the development of a child's mental and physical properties or faculties and personal characteristics? And what are some of the more obvious sensitive periods and their general time parameters? For how long, when do they begin generally, and when would they end? You might provide 1 or 2 of those. Don't get carried away. Remember, keep your discussion to 250, not your discussion, excuse me, your written assignment, 250 to 500 words, well edited, concisely developed, and that's what I would expect from you, and I will give you feedback on that. Thank you.